Good evening. Welcome to the Costa Mesa Planning Commission meeting for Monday, September 13th, 2021. I call the meeting to order and ask you to stand with me and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, Julie, roll call, please.
Chair Jericho,
Here.
Vice Chair Zick,
Oh, is it on? Hold on a second. Go ahead. Here. Sorry about that.
Commissioner Arith,
Present.
Commissioner Russell,
Here.
Commissioner Toller.
Here.
Please note that Commissioner Arith and Commissioner Toller are present via Zoom.
Okay, thank you very much. We have no announcements or presentations on the agenda this evening, which brings us to public comment. Public comment is for members of the public to address the Planning Commission on items that are not on tonight's agenda. Commenters will have 3 minutes to speak or is otherwise directed by the Commission. Julie, do we have any public comments tonight?
Nobody via Zoom, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Anybody, any member of the public in the chambers tonight wish to address the Commission on items not on tonight's agenda? Please come forward. Okay, seeing none, I'll close public comment. Brings us to Planning Commissioner comments, and we'll begin tonight with Commissioner Toller on Zoom.
I have no comments tonight, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Arith.
Thank you, Chair Jericho. I have no comments this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Russell.
I have no comments today.
Okay, Vice Chair Zick.
I also have no comments tonight. Thank you, sir.
And I have no comments as well. Thank you very much all. Consent calendar, there are no items on the consent calendar this evening. This brings us to public hearings. Julie, please read title of public hearing number 1 into the record.
Public hearing item number 1, planning application 18-34A2, parentheses ZA-21-18, to modify a previously approved conditional use permit to allow for a Type 7 manufacturing license for volatile extraction at 3503 Cadillac Avenue, Unit F5. Please note that no public comments have been received on this item. This is a call for any ex parte communications.
Commissioners, any ex parte communications to report?
Mr. Chairman,
Vice Chair.
I received a email correspondence giving me a heads up on this item from the applicant's representative.
Thank you. Commissioner Russell, any?
I got an email as well.
Okay, Commissioner Arith.
I received several emails from the representative and one correspondence with the owners of the business.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Toller?
No.
Okay, received emails also from the applicant's authorized agent and had a conversation with their agent, Mr. Fitzpatrick, at end of last week. So, Mr. Yeager, the floor is yours.
Good morning, or good evening, Chair and Commission. My name is Chris Yeager, Assistant Planner with the City of Costa Mesa here. Tonight we have the Metro X application to modify the existing conditional use permit for SW Ventures. The project is located in Cambridge Park at 3505 Cadillac and Suite F5. This is a multi-tenant industrial park, and the location is within the Measure X zone. The property is zoned Plan Development Industrial, and it has a general plan land use designation of industrial park. Properties to the north and east are all zoned industrial park. Property to the west is the Santa Ana River, and to the south is the 405 freeway. This application is a request to modify the existing conditional use permit to operate a volatile extraction marijuana manufacturing and distribution facility within the existing tenant space. The use would include distillation, packaging, and distribution of the final product. With regards to the state licensing requirements, the applicant would be applying for a Type 7 manufacturing license, which would allow for the volatile extraction. Just some history on Measure X and the entitlement history here. In 2016, voters approved Measure X, which allowed for cannabis businesses, including distributors, manufacturers, processors, research and development, laboratories, as well as testing labs and transporters within the Measure X zone. Cultivation is currently prohibited under Measure X. SW Ventures applied for their marijuana business permit for a manufacturing and distribution facility, and the business permit application was reviewed by the Community Improvement Division and included background checks as well as the required submittal of a business plan, operations plan, security plan, and safety plan. Once the items were received by city staff, a notice to proceed letter was issued on August 22nd, 2018, and an application for a CUP was filed the same day. The CUP was approved on October 22nd, 2018, and the marijuana business permit was issued on March 16, 2020. In order to allow for volatile extraction, as requested tonight, the applicant applied to amend the marijuana business permit, and following a review by the Community Improvement Division, a notice to proceed with the application for the amendment was issued on June 24th, 2021. Upon approval of the modified CUP, the applicant would begin the remaining steps of the marijuana business permit process for the subject amendment, which would include obtaining any required building, fire safety permit, and inspections. Upon completion of all the steps, the marijuana business permit would be approved, and the applicant would need to receive a business license from the city. After approval of the marijuana business permit, business license, as well as any other necessary permits issued by the State Bureau of Cannabis Control, the applicant would be able to begin operation of the new use. To date, the city has received 38 applications for Measure X uses. 18 have marijuana business permits which have been issued. 30 have approved CUPs, including the modification before you tonight. 4 applications have been denied, and 5 applications are currently pending. This is just a zoomed in view showing the Cambridge Business Park and the various applications and facilities that are there. The tenant space is located in Building F, Suite F5. It has direct access to parking spaces at the front, and the building does have a roll-up door at the rear. Building F has a total of 5 tenant spaces, 4 of which are in the process, approved, and or occupied by cannabis-related uses. In terms of business operation, the use of the facility will remain relatively unchanged from the approved CUP. The project would install a new C1D1 fire-rated booth in the extraction room, and all functional butane extraction of resin and oil from the cannabis biomass will take place in this booth. Refinement of the crude oil will take place in adjacent distillation rooms. The booth is equipped with butane vapor detectors and is equipped with a ventilation system to ensure safety. The process for this is cannabis is delivered to the facility, and it would enter through the shipping area. Raw material would be moved to the biomass prep room and or the freezer, and then moved to the C1D1 extraction booth. The process from there consists of heating and chilling under pressure, which turns the biomass into crude oil and cannabis extract. Isobutane would be delivered to the site on an as-needed basis in an approved cylinder. The last step with the booth is to run the crude oil through the color redemption column, where isobutane has to be removed and recovered so that the extract no longer contains a detectable flammable content of isobutane. The extract is then tested, removed from the booth, and it will remain in the extraction room where any residual isobutane would evaporate. Extraction is then, or the extract is then put into approved containers and moved into the packaging room and entered into the California metric system where it's stored until sales take place. Any biomass that's left over would be rendered unusable and moved to the waste room. Staff is recommending a variety of conditions on the project, most of which are holdovers from the previous approvals. Some of the new conditions include that the volatile extraction operations be conducted according to the approved technical reports, the safety plans and the construction plans, and that any storage of volatiles be conducted according to the fire code and OC health regulations. The complete findings are available in the staff report, but essentially as conditioned, the proposed manufacturing distribution use would be consistent with other industrial uses in the immediate vicinity. Excuse me. The use would be within the existing building and is consistent with the zoning and the properties in the surrounding site. The recommended conditions include those related to compliance with building and fire codes. They're intended to ensure that there would be no detriment to the health, safety, and general welfare of the community and the immediately abutting area, and measures designed to maintain and improve security at the facility have been provided. The proposed use would be within the existing building, and there would be no proposed additions to the building, therefore no change to density or intensity. And in addition, the proposed use is a conditionally permitted use within the zone. So with that, staff recommends that the Planning Commission adopt a resolution to find the project categorically exempt from CEQA and to approve the planning application subject to the conditions of approval. I can make myself available to questions here, and we also have the applicants.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Yeager. Commissioner Russell or Vice Chair Zick, do you have any questions of staff? Go ahead, sir.
Just one question. Since I see we have the city fire marshal in attendance, am I to assume that they have no concern about the safety and the process associated with this extraction process?
The fire marshal has given his sign off on the initial safety plan, but if he has anything else to add, I'll let him.
Mr. Neal. Good evening. Oh, let me turn you on here. Hold on a second. There you go, sir.
Good evening. I have reviewed this. We have a preliminary safety plan, as we do with all of these volatile extraction facilities. So what we've noticed is that it's difficult for them to pin down the equipment they're going to use potentially 6 months, a year from now. But we have reviewed it. We've worked with the company that lists the equipment, installs it, and field verifies it. So we have a comfort level with the company, with the operators. We ensure that they maintain the equipment. We do regular inspections, as well as the third-party verification company will come in and make sure that they're being maintained according to their listing. So we have a level of confidence in the equipment and the operators maintaining that equipment. So that's currently where we're at with these types of facilities.
Okay, I thought that might be the case, and I want to thank you for being here tonight.
You're welcome.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Russell, do you have questions?
Just one question. How many of the volatile extraction permits have been issued in the city?
Ms. Lee, do you know, or Mr. Yeager?
I do not have the answer in front of me. If Ms. Lee has it, she can go ahead, but otherwise I can get back to you on that.
Okay. I was just curious.
I don't have it in front of me, but I'll do a quick check and get back to the commission.
This isn't the first volatile extraction.
Yeah, that's what I just wondered how many there were.
So, we have approved several other volatile extraction operations. I'll get an exact count. And
Okay,
get back
that's
to the
fine.
commission. Thanks.
All right, thank you very much. Commissioner Arith, do you have questions?
Thank you, Chair DeArcol. I appreciate it. Yes, I do. This may be a question for Mr. Neal or for Ms. Lee. Notice on page 71 and 77 of the staff report that there's still a pressure safety inspection that needs to be performed. That's on page number 70, handwritten page 71 at the top. And then it also comports with handwritten page 77 in that the actual quantities will be updated based on the PSI technical report for the chemical and hazmat schedules. Are there any issues with the fire code analysis forthcoming?
Mr. Neal.
Good evening again. There are no issues. As I said, the quantities needed to process the cannabis are listed in the report. So depending on the size of the equipment they purchase will dictate the size of the butane that they will have on hand. So if they have a smaller extractor, obviously they'll have a smaller amount. The fire code limits them in the occupancy that they're maintaining, in F1 occupancy, to only amount needed to process that equipment. So there's no excess storage, there should be no additional quantities on site. It should just be what's in that PSI report. That's why we list that as a condition, in that they aren't storing any excess. So PSI will list exactly what's needed to process that equipment or verify that the company has listed what's needed to process the equipment, and that's what they're on site. So that's what I'm referring to in that report.
Okay, thank you, sir. I think in tangent to the, or in addition to the last question, in working with VOCs, are you also checking any kind of control equipment in terms of afterburners, oxidizers, carbon absorbers, flares, if applicable?
So they don't usually have any additional equipment. The only thing, basically, it's a closed loop extractor. So the intent of the system itself is that no butane is leaked unless there's a catastrophic event or an emergency. So it should be completely isolated inside of the system itself and recovered. When they take the cannabis out after it's been extracted, there is some light off-gassing, but that stays in the room while it's off-gassing. And it's continually monitored with gas detection to make sure it doesn't reach 25% of the lower flammable or explosive limit.
Okay. And Mr. Neal, do you work in conjunction with the South Coast Air Quality Management District to have those air quality standards met as well? Just specifically since we're talking about VOCs like butane.
So we don't work directly with them. I believe I'm not sure how the reports are routed, but we partner with them if there's anything that comes up or there's any violations that are out there. We will work with them at different sites depending on what the nature of the violation is. As I said, we don't anticipate a release. We don't anticipate this being a type of equipment that has regular occurrences of some sort of environmental response. It should be completely contained in the equipment itself.
Okay, great. Thank you, sir. I appreciate your time. I do have several more questions, if that's okay, Chair DeArco.
Please go ahead.
Thank you. I had a similar question to Commissioner Russell and what other Type 7 VOC licensees are operating in the Measure X zone. I think we may have talked about that earlier, Ms. Lee, and that we have several already. And it goes back to my my last question about how rigorous are we in terms of ensuring that I guess it would be called an application checklist for a permit to construct or permit to operate through the South Coast Air Quality Management District for businesses that are using VOCs in their business enterprise. Do we actually follow up with that information to make sure that those checklists have been complete and they're filed with the city?
Commissioner Arith, regarding processing and coordination with AQMD, largely that coordination is left to the applicant as the applicant for the permit for AQMD as well as the city's permit. We do have a condition of approval, or really it's a reiteration of state and regional laws, that the applicant connect with AQMD and ensure that they are in compliance with any permit requirements of that agency. So that is primarily the applicant's role. And we do have a count in terms of the number of volatile extraction operations that have been approved by the city so far. Mr. Yeager has that information.
Okay,
so
great.
The city has approved 11 Type 7 licenses, which would allow for the volatile extraction.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Yeager and Ms. Lee. So am I to understand that we are not guaranteeing that any of the applicants for a Type 7 VOC license are submitting any of those communications that they've had with SCAQMD to us, the city?
We do not require the submittal of those communications as part of our permitting process, but we do, as part of our building permit process, coordinate with AQMD as to any requirements they may have before we issue our building permit, but it is the applicant's responsibility to obtain any required permits under the law.
Okay. So that information will come out in the building permits?
It's the part of the process that we check with
Okay.
AQMD, yes.
Okay, perfect. Let's see here. And if we, would this be the right time to talk to the applicant, Chair DeArco?
Once we open the public hearing and the applicant's made a presentation, then the commissioners will have opportunities to question the applicant.
Okay, great. I do have, I guess, one more question for staff. I noticed in the report that was submitted by Southwest Ventures that there's a lot of biomass or bio waste that's being generated in the extraction process, and I'm wondering if the city gets to count that organic waste in terms of our AB 1383 numbers that we have to meet for the state. Because I'm not sure that the Costa Mesa Sanitary District is counting that. I just want to make sure that the city is, because that's ultimately where, you know, the responsible entity for meeting that goal.
Commissioner Arith, I do not believe that the city counts that biomass waste towards our AB goals. I will check with our Public Services Department regarding that question, but I do not believe that we count it, no.
Okay, because I think it's, is it a city contract in terms of the waste hauler for the Measure X zone?
I believe it is. Mr. Yang, if you'd like to correct me, please do.
No, Director, Ms. Lee, there's, what we'll do, we'll find out the information. Actually, for the trash collection, it's basically in a different division, and that information can be gathered afterwards to the meeting, and we can inform Commissioner Arith with respect to that. Thank you.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you. I think the intent in that question is just to make sure that organic waste is being counted towards something. In this case, you know, all cities are being required to offset their, you know, green waste and do green waste diversion that's coming up here pretty soon. And I know that the city has been working very diligently in conjunction with the Costa Mesa Sanitary District to help meet that goal, because there are some penalties on the back end of it. And I think that's about it for now. Thank you, Chair DeAricol. Staff, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Toller, you have any questions of staff?
I do not. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll go ahead and open the public hearing and ask the applicant to come forward. And Mr. Fitzpatrick, you know the drill. Have you read the staff report, conditions of approval and findings, and are you in agreement with the conditions?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Oh, let me turn, I'm sorry. There you go.
Yes, Mr. Chair, we have read the excellent staff report and are in agreement with the conditions.
Okay, floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. So we don't have a presentation tonight. We consider this fairly routine. We've been in substantial compliance. Our original CUP, in that CUP, it talks about when equipment changes that we have to notify the city. We're in the process of doing that. We were in plan check. When we were pulled from plan check, originally instructed to do an MCUP, and now here we are for a full CUP at the Planning Commission. So really, this is one room. And to the prior comment on waste, we had a type 6 where the rooms now that won't be utilized were for large storage of ethanol, because we plan to do a substantial extraction business. The market changed, the model changed, and now type 7, which allows them to be a little bit more precise with the molecules, is the new business model. So although we will be on smaller quantities, we are contracted with one of the city's franchise trash haulers, and I believe it is counted in the waste. All of the waste is counted and tracked, so it would be part of our the city's numbers. But really, we're here to answer any questions that we have. We think that this is fairly routine. There are 2 operational type 7s up and running. So again, we consider this fairly routine.
Okay, thank you, sir. Commissioners, any questions of the applicant up on the dais? Okay, I don't see any. Commissioner Arith, do you have any questions of the applicant?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Chair DeAricol, and thank you for coming this evening, Mr. Fitzpatrick. You probably heard my question earlier, if you were in the room, about reaching out to SEA QMD. Have you and your clients done that as of yet to complete the checklist?
So what's interesting is we were in plan check, and in plan check, you talk about the size of the equipment, the type of the equipment. We have introduced HAL booth, which is a kind of a belt and suspenders approach necessary for volatile organic compounds. But in order for us to give you those questions, we really need to be in plan check and even more advanced to once the equipment has been approved, we go through a third-party field certification that looks at all of the different quantities of open, stored, and closed. So at this phase, the answer is no.
Okay, thank you. I noticed on page 36 of the staff report that you had a higher local Costa Mesa provision in your business model. Can you tell me a little bit about that, please?
I don't have that in front of me, Commissioner. Could you share a little bit of the color of what you're looking at?
Sure. We hire a local Costa Mesa in Costa Mesa as a priority policy.
Oh, yeah. So the great news is the Chamber of Commerce has a higher local. This is efficiently located. You can come through Moon Park and under for bikeability. So we've just had a policy where we hire local. I think currently we have one local Costa Mesa resident. This model really dynamically changes what we're doing here. And we've been waiting a long time, like 7 months to get to this stage, pulled out of the plan check process. And so we have a substantial commitment of investment of capital, and that would trigger the additional hiring.
Okay. I noticed on, thank you, Mr. Fitzpatrick. I noticed on page 45 in the supply chain diagram that during the cultivation phase, where you source your biomass, that you have several areas around California that are identified. And I'm wondering if you have any preference for where you source those things, because as you know, there is a, buying local tends to cut down on emissions and transportation costs and so forth. Do you have anything incorporated into the business in that direction?
Yeah, the sourcing is dependent on market demands. So the reason why they went with this type 7 is, and my recommendation was, don't go through the time and the money, right? This has been a lot of time and a lot of money. Why not just utilize one of the other type 7s to achieve your desired outcome? But this team really feels like they need to control the process, and not just if there's residual pesticides and things like this, but additional genetics that might be involved. So they wanted to control the entire process, including the protocols for cleaning, so that each run was unique to the genetics. Driving that, it's primarily sourced from indoor, so we can source from Santa Ana. This is more higher end, so it's less outdoor, which would be in the north, which would lend itself to more of a local sourcing. But it really is, it's driven by genetics more so than where. So Santa Ana is now bringing on some cultivation that meets the standards. Long Beach meets those standards, and some of the desert communities meet those standards. So it's much less focused. Before the type 6, we would have been sourcing mostly outdoor from the north, because you want to put it through in high quantities and you're just looking for the oil in quantity. Here, they're really specific on the genetics, so I think it lends itself to local sourcing.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fitzpatrick. Does Southwest Ventures tend to keep a record of or a list of businesses that of cultivators and their permits? Because I know it says in your application or in your client's application that you only work with certified growers and cultivators. Is that correct?
Yeah, by state regs and thereby city regs, we are required to work with licensed producers. There's a thing called Metric, which is the state's track and trace system. So we have to go from seed to sale. So as it passes from or into, within, and then exiting our facility, we have to track all of those folks that we do business with, from where we've sourced the flower for those licenses. This does have a distributor license, so if we're using ours, then that's noted. Or if it is a third-party distributor transporter, that's noted. But everything, this is the most rigorous industry you've ever seen. So everything is tracked and traced, including the relationships they have on sourcing biomass.
Okay, thank you. And I believe maybe one last question. As you probably heard earlier, I was referencing page 71 and 77 of the handwritten pages from the staff agenda. And I see that you're still in the middle of getting the pressure safety check. That still needs to be completed. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And as a function of certifying the chem and hazmat schedule, that pressure check needs to be finalized. Is that correct?
Yeah, as well as, reports of Chapter 50 of the Fire Code we have to comply with, which is open, stored, and closed quantities of VOCs, PSI. What's interesting, one of the hardest things to get for this type of use is the insurance company. So if you think this process is rigorous, you should try and go get it insured.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fitzpatrick. That's all for now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Toller.
I have no questions. Thank you.
Okay. I have no questions of the applicant. I will open the public comment portion of the public hearing. Anyone in the chambers wishing to speak to this item, please come forward. Okay, seeing no one coming forward, Julie, do we have anyone on the telephone or Zoom that wishes to speak to this item?
Yes, we do, Mr. Chairman. Phone number ending in 698, you may provide your public comment.
You have to unmute yourself, 698. You're on mute. Press star 9. There we go.
Chair Jericho, can you hear me?
I can. Proceed.
Oh, thank you. Stephen Chan. A point of order before I comment on the agenda item, Chair Jericho. I believe if you review your opening of this hearing, that you called for public comment from the chambers and neglected to call for public comment for Zoom participants, and I request that you do so at the end of this hearing and before the next agenda item. And now I will make my comment regarding this application. I am all in support of this application so long as it remains compliant the applicable state and local regulations. Thank you. Chair Jericho, will you please correct and rectify the public comment period of this hearing? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I'll take your word for it, and we'll get to that after our public hearings. Thank you. Anyone else, Julie?
No, there is not, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. We'll then close the public comment portion of the public hearing. I don't anticipate the applicant needs to come up and offer any additional comments. I have one procedural question for Ms. Lee. Because this is a modification of an existing CUP, it is technically an application for a MCUP. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. And in procedurally in the fine city of Costa Mesa, we typically MCUPs are processed by the zoning administrator and decided.
That's correct.
Okay. So what was the policy decision and the thinking about bringing I don't know if this is the first MCUP associated with Measure X or not, but I just want to get staff's thinking on the reason for bringing it to the commission. This isn't a criticism. I was just wanting to hear why you decided to do that.
Thank you, Chair. The zoning code provides for the zoning administrator to push any zoning administrator decision up to the planning commission level for cause. And essentially in this particular situation, this is the first Measure X amendment that we've had that essentially changes the license type from non-volatile to volatile. And in that way, it was a sort of intensification of some of the impacts that we originally discussed at the Planning Commission meeting when the original conditional use permit was adopted. So the idea was that any intensification of use, including sort of heightening the level of permit, would come to the Planning Commission. I believe this is the first one. We've had many amendments to original conditional use permits that have gone through the zoning administrator but those were essentially floor plan changes or relatively administrative changes that were not changing the use or intent or intensity of use at the site. So that was the reasoning.
Okay. All right, I'll have a question or a comment about that following. Commissioners, are there any more questions of staff at all? Okay. I will close the public hearing and ask if there is a motion by anyone. Okay, I think I see Vice Chair Zick about to punch the button there. There's a motion. Go ahead and state your motion, Vice Chair.
I recommend that we find the project categorically exempt from the provisions of the California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA, and approve this planning application 18-34A2, subject to the conditions of approval.
Okay, and that motion has been seconded by Commissioner Russell. Any comments on the motion? Vice Chair, you made the motion, so if you wish.
No comments.
Okay, Commissioner Russell?
No comments, thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Arith, any comments on the motion?
Sir, I'd like to see if the maker of the motion would consider a friendly amendment.
Have to state the amendment.
Sure. I'd like to see if we can add the applicant completing and communicating the application checklist at the South Coast Air Quality Management District and working with them.
So I don't have the expertise to understand quite what that would mean. Ms. Lee, could you address that from a process standpoint?
Yes, thank you, Chair and Commission. I believe what Commissioner Arith may be referring to is any permit to operate paperwork that may be necessary to process through the South Coast Air Quality Management District in order to operate a volatile extraction use at the site. Typically, something like that is the responsibility of the applicant to ensure that they're complying with other state and regional laws. But certainly it's something that we could include as part of the Planning Commission's motion at your pleasure, that we would confirm that the appropriate paperwork through South Coast Air Quality Management District had been processed prior to issuance of a building permit.
Okay, I appreciate that answer. And let me ask a follow-up question, and maybe this is for the city attorney. Since the permitting agency is the AQMD, and the applicant is required to meet the permitting agency's requirements, by us getting in the middle of requesting documentation and that sort of thing, does that potentially engage us in some accountability relative to their requirements to meet the permitting agency's requirements?
You know, Mr. President, I'm having a hard time understanding. You can there you go, and lean into the mic. Thanks.
Is this better?
Much better. Thank you.
Thank you. My understanding of the conditions is really a request for information from the applicant to submit to the city from AQMD. As such, that does not impose any burden on the city to enforce AQMD's regulations, if that is your question.
Okay. I don't have any problem with the accepting that as a friendly amendment, provided the applicant doesn't have any concern. No concerns, then I accept that. Thank you, Chair Arith.
Okay.
It's okay with me as well.
All right. So that addition is okay with the second. I just have one comment in that I understand that this is an intensification of use. This is the first request for a modification of a CUP for an intensification of use. It's normally an MCUP. I would just prefer that we not see these and allow the zoning administrator to do his or her job. Given everything that the city is going through and what we're going to be planning for, I have a feeling that, and with the rollout of retail cannabis, we spent 30 minutes on this. I just don't think it's necessary, and I would just, and it's not my decision to make. I'm just letting you know, I would prefer that this be handled, these MCUPs, if there's any change of use in the Measure X zone, be handled at the zoning administrator level, and somebody can tell me to pound sand, but that's just my opinion. So with that, I'll call for the question. Julie, could you please read the roll? If you could please come forward and tell us your objection with the added. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We attempted to reach out to all commissioners. Commissioner Earth refused to engage us in a dialogue, chose to not respond to the authorized agent and go directly to the business, never communicated prior nor here the intent to launch such an aggressive additional condition of approval. I'm concerned that a sitting planning commissioner is reaching out and having dialogues with regulatory bodies. If he wants to have some questions, we should have had these discussed beforehand. This is a burden that no other applicant has had. I don't know why we're here. We have an unbelievable third-party plan check for both building as well as a third-party fire checker, plus our fire marshal. I would just encourage the commission to stick with the as-is approval.
So, Mr. Fitzpatrick, here's what I want to understand. Did you indicate to us that you were okay with the added condition?
No, we object.
Okay, you object. Okay, so that's what I want to understand.
I don't know why we're here.
I understand. So I get the history. So for the sake of time and efficiency, what I want to know is you object to the added condition.
100%.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Vice Chair.
I appreciate that clarification. My acceptance of the friendly amendment was based on what I thought I saw as concurrence from the applicant. And to the extent that them submitting documentation that, might come to the city and go in the file somewhere, if they had no problem with that, I certainly would have no problem with that. The expertise, obviously, for reviewing the correspondence and the requirement material that they have to supply to the AQMD, that expertise may exist in the city, but certainly the accountability for that is with AQMD. So to the extent that the applicant is not in agreement with that, I would not be inclined to include that as a friendly amendment, and Commissioner can certainly make a substitute motion, but I would not include that as a friendly amendment.
Okay, so then the original motion by Vice Chair Zick, absent the additional condition, is now on the floor. Commissioner Russell, do you continue to second that original motion?
I do.
Okay, thank you. Any other commissioner comments on the motion, or is there a substitute motion?
Substitute motion.
Okay, Commissioner Harris, go ahead.
It's to approve staff recommendations and also the additional provision highlighted earlier.
Okay, is there a second of the substitute motion? Please hit second motion button on your panel if there is. We need to clear that, Julie, for the substitute. Thank you. So a motion by Commissioner Arith. Is there a second of that motion? Going once. Okay, seeing none, the substitute motion dies. It brings us back to the original motion on the floor. Julie, a roll call vote, please.
Sorry, Chair Jericho,
Aye.
Vice Chair Zick,
Aye.
Commissioner Russell,
Aye.
Commissioner Arith,
Aye.
Commissioner Toller.
Aye.
Sorry, was that an aye?
Correct. Aye.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, thank you very much. That decision is final unless appealed to the City Council within 7 days. Good luck, folks. Thank you. Okay, Julie, public hearing item number 2, please read title into the record.
Public hearing item number 2, zoning application 21-22 for a minor conditional use permit to allow a counseling use in a CL zone and to deviate from parking requirements for a group counseling use located at 3151 Airway Avenue, Suite L2. Please note that no public comments have been received on this item. This is a call for any ex parte communications.
Commissioners, any ex parte communications to report? Commissioner Toller or Arith?
No.
Okay,
None.
very good. Thank you. Mr. Yeager, the floor is yours.
All right, so the second application tonight is the request for the minor conditional use permit for a group counseling use and a deviation from parking for the use at 3151 Airway Avenue and Suite L2. So this is located in the John Wayne Executive Guild. It's adjacent to the John Wayne Airport, surrounded by Paularino Avenue, Airway Avenue, and Baker. It's just south of the 405 freeway, east of the 55, and north of the 73. The surrounding properties are all industrial offices and airport related. The property is zoned commercial limited, and it has a general plan land use designation of industrial park. The property is surrounded by other CL and industrial park zoned properties. This request is a minor conditional use permit to allow for a group counseling office use and to deviate from parking requirements for the group counseling use. And the parking deviation is requested off of unique operating characteristics. Counseling offices are not specifically listed in the city's land use matrix or within the parking requirements section of the zoning code, and a prior zoning administrator determination determined that individual and family counseling uses are most similar to general office uses, and those would be permitted in this location. The determination found that group counseling uses are most similar to trade and vocational schools, and therefore they can be permitted in the CL zone with a minor conditional use permit. And the parking rate for those are 10 spaces per 1,000 square feet of gross floor area, which is higher than parking rates which are applied to most commercial uses. Therefore, applicant is requesting the approval of the MCUP both to allow the counseling use in the CL zone and to deviate from those parking requirements. MCUPs, as was just discussed, they are typically reviewed by the zoning administrator. However, has been practiced that MCUPs for group counseling be forwarded to the Planning Commission for review and their decision. This use proposes to provide daytime sessions Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. And the curriculum includes intensive individual therapy, group therapy, family therapy, art therapy classes, and life skills classes. The classes and group sessions would take place within the group room, and individual sessions would be held in the various offices. The use would conduct rapid drug tests on site and would also have drug tests that would be sent off to labs for definitive testing. All of the uses are proposed to take place indoors. The business would have 6 full-time staff, and they would be conducting administrative services, and they would be serving a maximum of 15 clients on any given day. The typical group sessions range from 12 to 15 clients, and they would attend 3 sessions per day. The clients are dropped off at the site at 8 a.m. and picked up from the facility at 3:30 p.m. from vans that are operated by the facility. In the event of a smoking break, the applicant has indicated that there are 5 designated smoking areas on the property. On the slide there is a picture of one. And other potential concerns for this type of use are primarily related to parking demand, specifically from the group counseling portion, because that typically involves a large number of people arriving and departing the location at the same time. The business does have a no loitering company policy, which applies to both staff and clients, and this policy indicates that the center shall be vacated by all staff and clients by 4 p.m. every day, and would require that no one loiters around the center. The parking requirement for group counseling uses is 10 spaces per 1,000 square feet, of gross floor area. And this specific use would require 14 total parking spaces based on the square footage and the parking requirements. And the suite is allocated 12 spaces based on what is on site. So there's a difference of 2. The office proposes to have 6 full-time employees who drive their own cars, and they would also have 2 11-passenger vans on site, which would transfer their clients to and from the counseling center. Clients would be picked up from their personal dwellings or from group homes throughout the county and brought to the facility. The transportation policy for the business does require that clients utilize the van transportation. They cannot drive themselves. They cannot be dropped off by friends or family. Therefore, on-site parking should be sufficient to accommodate the 2 vans and 6 personal vehicles for staff. Staff proposes a variety of conditions of approval. One, that the hours of operations be limited from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., that group sessions be limited to 15 clients and must be located in the group room, that the use be limited to take place inside the suite, that smoking be restricted to designated smoking areas on the property, and if parking issues arise, they would need to be addressed. Condition number 15 requires that the clients must be brought to and from the facility by shuttle vans only, and that there be no walk-ins, and that there be a limit to 2 vans only. The findings, as conditioned, the project, it would be compatible and harmonious with the general neighborhood, would have no impacts on neighboring properties. There are no abutting residential properties to the property here. And there should be no negative impacts on parking, as there would be 4 unused parking spaces. And as conditioned, smoking would be required to take place in the designated smoking areas only. Project is required to meet all applicable building and fire codes, so it would not be detrimental to public health, and the project is compatible with the zoning code and general plan. With that, staff recommends that the commission adopt a resolution to find the project categorically exempt from CEQA and to approve zoning application 21-22 subject to the conditions of approval. And the business owners are in the chamber tonight to answer questions as well.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Yeager. I think Vice Chair Zick has questions. Go ahead, sir.
I do, thank you. Thank you for the parking analysis, Mr. Yeager. That's pretty simple and straightforward. My question has to do with the notification process. I don't know why I get confused about this, so I'll ask it again. I'm assuming that some of the businesses in this business park are owner occupied and tenant occupied. So when we send out notices, who do those notices actually go to?
So the city's notification requirements require that all property owners within 500 feet and all occupants within 500 feet be noticed.
Got it. Okay. And with that, we received no input from any businesses that had issues.
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Russell, do you have any questions of staff? Commissioner Arith, any questions of staff?
Thank you, Chair DeArical. I have no questions of staff
Okay,
right
Commissioner Toller?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I will open the public hearing. Ask the applicant to come forward, please, if they wish to make a presentation to the commission. Okay, I do need to have you come to the podium so I can ask you a couple of key questions. If you could tell us your names, please. Oops, I'm sorry. Podium mic, there you go.
Hello, my name is Mary Cass, and this is my husband, Robert Cass.
Okay, and what I need to ask both of you is, have you read the staff report and the findings and the conditions of approval, and do you agree, are you in agreement with the conditions of approval?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
And I agree.
Great. I have a couple of quick questions. So in the staff report, and I don't know if this would be your phrase, but it's in the staff report, it says the curriculum includes intensive individual therapy. What is intensive individual therapy?
We actually offer it's kind of like a trauma-based sort of therapy. It's called EMDR, And that is what's considered intense. That's done by our licensed LMFT.
Okay, there's no medications involved, no kind of.
Absolutely not.
Okay, that's, I'm a layman, so I don't know, I'm just asking the question. Rapid drug test, what form do those take? Is it saliva, urine, breath?
It's urine.
Okay.
In an it's called an Instacup, where we just peel the label and
Got
you
it.
can see.
And are those results immediate?
Yes.
Okay, what happens if somebody tests positive? What's the protocol for that individual?
The protocol is to segregate them from the rest of the clients. And then from there, depending on where they're residing, they either go back to that particular place, or they go back to like a hospital setting or a detox setting, because we cannot have a person that's obviously under the influence.
Sure, and the reason I asked that question was because I wanted to know, I'm assuming that your on-site transportation that brings them there would then take that person back. They wouldn't have to.
That is correct.
Okay, that's the only reason I was asking the question. Okay, great.
And usually, Mr. Chair, if a person is using drugs, they're not going to come to group anyway. So we've never had an issue with that.
Understood, yeah. That wasn't my
They're busy
main
doing
concern.
other
I was just,
things.
what was the protocol for if somebody
Yeah.
did, what you would do? Okay, perfect. Okay, thank you very much. I don't think, Commissioners, any questions of the applicant? Commissioner Arith?
Thank you, Chair D'Arcole, I do.
Okay.
Thank you for being here this evening. Did you reach out to Asset Management at 1976 or In-Home Care Services at 1993 and receive any feedback about what you're proposing this evening?
No.
No. Okay.
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
Your next door neighbors at this location.
We didn't.
Okay, we didn't receive any communication from them. I'm assuming they received notice?
They would have received notice,
Okay,
yes.
thank you.
Okay. No more questions. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Toller, any questions of the applicant?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, folks. You can have a seat. I will open the public comment portion of the public hearing. Anyone in the chambers, well, obviously not, can come forward to speak on this item. Seeing none, are there any members of the community on Zoom or on telephone, Julie, that wish to speak to this item?
No, there is not, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we'll close public comment. Any final questions of staff from any of the commissioners? Okay, we'll close the public hearing. And I will make a motion to find that the project is categorically exempt from the provisions of the California Environmental Quality Act per CEQA Guidelines Section 15301 existing facilities and approve zoning application 21-22 subject to the conditions of approval. Is there a second? Please punch your second motion button if there is.
I'll second.
Okay, Commissioner Arith has seconded the motion. Any comments on the motion? Okay, seeing none. I have no comments. Julie, roll call vote, please.
Chair D'Arcole?
Aye.
Vice Chair Zick?
Aye.
Commissioner Toller?
Aye.
Commissioner Russell?
Aye.
Commissioner Arith?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, and that decision is final in 7 days, unless appealed to the City Council within 7 days. Thank you, folks. Good luck. Okay, so I'm going to circle back to the agenda on public comment per Mr. Chan's comments. I don't know that I omitted Zoom or telephonic, but I'll assume he's right. And open public comment to members of the public who are on Zoom or on the telephone. And Julie, is Mr. Chen still around?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, go ahead, sir. My apologies.
Chairman D'Arcole, thank you very much. We are now 546 days past 2 weeks to slow the curve regarding that housing element just discussed in joint chambers. And my comments regarding golf course affordable homes. Vice Chair Zick, congratulations. I've proposed affordable homes on the 100-acre golf practice area and not on the 2 adjoining 18-hole golf courses. Moving on, Strut Bar in its normal operations is operating as a public nuisance. Since the start of the Newport Mesa Unified School District 21-22 school year, the Soup Kitchen neighborhood is getting 4 nights a week of low-frequency bass until 1:30 to 2 o'clock in the morning. 2 of these are school nights. This morning, a Monday, my neighbor, who has high hopes for her granddaughter to become a NASA scientist, could not get the first grader to school because she was too sleepy. She was awakened by the non-compliant Smart and Final at 7 a.m., however, with their newly secured, loudly beeping, gas-powered forklift. They made do with electric for 2.5 years, and then we had a hearing on August 3rd when they got a get-out-of-jail-free card. Why is the Soup Kitchen neighborhood families being oppressed by these liquor licensees, by this bar? It's not just the homes behind the bar, but also the apartment dwellers behind AutoZone. And if the regulators remain MIA, it will also be the new owners and the development between Neptune and AutoZone. When the neighbors of the Soup Kitchen are calling the police department about a bar with illicit liquor license restrictions stating any entertainment provided shall not be audible outside the area under the control of the licensee, many times the police department is telling us to call city council. Please answer this question, commissioners. Why is Strut Bar beating low-frequency bass into the Soup Kitchen 4 nights a week, 2 of which are school nights? Where are the regulators? Or are the commercial neighbors of the Soup Kitchen so above the law, so high that families must sacrifice their children's education for the sake of a bar that can't turn their wrist on the volume knob? Hashtag Stop Strut School Night Bass. And remember, use your voice to demand 4,000 affordable homes on the remaining 36-hole golf course in Costa Mesa. Please do something for the children, the residents of this city about that bar and the 2 school nights a week, 4 nights total out of a week. That is unconscionable. It's called moral turpitude.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, that brings us to departmental reports, public services. Mr. Yang.
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman Derickle, and also Vice Chair Zick and honorable members of the Planning Commission. So just briefly, I just want to mention the Citywide Parking Study. The Citywide Parking Study is underway to identify opportunities to improve the overall parking experience for residents and guests. Our department, the Public Services Department, has held 3 public outreach meetings via Zoom in March and June, during which several members of the community provided feedback on parking in Costa Mesa. Therefore, the community is invited to attend a virtual community meeting for the Citywide Parking Study scheduled for September 28th at 6 p.m. This meeting will include an overview of the draft recommendation options and a discussion about the opportunities to improve residential parking. It'll be an opportunity to provide feedback and share the parking priorities that are important to all of us. Therefore, the study will be recommending an implementation plan focused on improving the overall parking experience for residents and guests. Just to repeat, the Citywide Parking Study meeting will be Tuesday, September 28th at 6 p.m. via Zoom. So if you want more information, just log on to costamesaca.gov/parking, and more information can be found there. So that's it for my report, so I'll defer it back to the chair.
Thank you, Mr. Yang. Development Services Report, Ms. Lee.
Thank you, Chair and Planning Commissioners. I just wanted to thank all of the commissioners this evening for participating in the joint City Council and Planning Commission study session on the housing element update. As you all know, it's one of the most important planning efforts that the city has undertaken in many years, certainly the most comprehensive. I'd like to just reiterate that the public comment period for the public review draft housing element, which is posted on the city's website, ends this Wednesday, September 15th. So if you haven't submitted your comments to the city, please do. You can submit those comments via an online form as well as via email. So please visit our website at the City of Costa Mesa website, Housing Element Update. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lee, and thank you to your staff for the great presentation tonight on the housing element. I really appreciate it, and I do appreciate all the hard work you are putting in and the opportunities you're giving the community to weigh in and provide input on that document. City Attorney Report, Mr. Preziosi.
Thank you. I would like to point out that the Ninth Circuit recently upheld the city's trial court victory in the Yellowstone matter.
Yes, thank you. I did note that, Mr. Preziosi, which is good news. I'm going to ask one, it doesn't really need a comment, but as it was mentioned, I think it may be briefly mentioned in the housing element study session tonight. Senate Bill 9 and Senate Bill 10 have cleared the legislature and are now, both those pieces of legislation are on the governor's desk, depending on what happens tomorrow. But should the governor sign those bills into law, I'd appreciate if we could get some kind of legal analysis from your office, Mr. Preziosi, of what that means for Costa Mesa, and in particular the R1 neighborhoods.
Certainly. My office normally sends out confidential memoranda on legislation that is approved, and we'll include it, as well as those questions that you just raised.
Great. Thank you very much, sir. With that, we'll stand in adjournment to our regularly scheduled meeting of September 27th, 2021. Good night.